Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Payoff.
Welcome to an all-new episode of The Payoff. I'm Tom. That's Jeff. Flair, Orton, Cage, Taboo Tuesday. I know how you feel about fan voting, so this must be exciting for you.
I'm excited. It was really the first poor test of this way of doing it on a Tuesday.
Well, I'm pumped to cover this one, man. Not a long match, but one of the things that caught my eye as I was prepping for this is that this was the main event.
Right.
It actually went on after Hogan, after Triple H and Shawn Michaels. I thought that was really interesting. So, we'll get into this, but I'm assuming the build for this is pretty good. Obviously, these guys were intertwined at this time. There's a number of things I want to talk about during this, but again, it's a short match, but I'm guessing it's going to be really entertaining because they were in the main event spot, so typically brings out the best in guys. So if it's okay with you, I say we jump right into it.
Let's jump right in, man.
All right, it's time for the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
So Taboo Tuesday, 2004. They did this again. So this wasn't the only Taboo Tuesday. But, this whole kind of Cyber Sunday type thing where fans vote on how each match should be stipulated or who should be in matches. And, Bruce Pritchard swears up and down that this was all completely legitimate voting. So let's get into what happened on the card. We had a dark match of Sergeant Slaughter defeating Muhammad Hassan, if you can believe that, in 2 minutes by disqualification. Shelton Benjamin's going to defeat Chris Jericho to win the IC title. Trish Stratus is going to keep the women's championship in a Fulfill Your Fantasy Battle Royal that involved Nydia, Jazz, Victoria, Gail Kim, Molly Holly, Stacy Keibler. So, interesting match there. Gene Snitsky's going to defeat Kane in a Weapons of Choice match. These two went 14 minutes, if you can believe that. Eugene defeats Eric Bischoff in Choose the Loser's Fate match in 2 minutes. Edge and Benoit are going to defeat Les Resistants by submission to win the World Tag Team Championships. Christy Hemme defeats Carmella. Different Carmella than we're thinking of. I don't know who that Carmella. Yeah. That Carmella was Carmella Garcia, an American model who was a Playboy magazine Miss April 2003.
Search contestant.
I don't remember her at all. Minute 48 lingerie pillow fight. Triple H is going to retain his World Heavyweight Championship, defeating Shawn Michaels in 14 minutes. I don't know if there's a stipulation or what that was. And then our main event, Flair and Orton, steel cage match. So there you go. What was the build to this match, man?
Yeah, I'll talk about the being on a Tuesday night. I'll talk about what some kind of external factors. There was some baseball that played into this. I'll talk about during the match and how it kind of affected the buy rate on this one. But this was the first time the fans were given the chance to vote on stipulations for a match, like we said. The voting actually started October 18th, which was the day before. So there's your first problem amongst a lot of things, but it actually was during that Raw and ended during Raw. Like, just why? I guess it was the early days, not even the early days of the internet, but maybe. We were still using AOL discs, but it was moved eventually, of course, to the more traditional Sunday night, became Cyber Sunday. But the main event on this one, of course, being Orton and Flair. And the determining factors was it a steel cage match, a falls count anywhere match, or a submission match? You figure how they were doing the voting on this one. They obviously knew everything on how they were going to do this. They could do the percentages however they wanted. But the steel cage won by a landslide, 68%. Falls count anywhere was 20%. The submission match was 12%. So that's how we got the steel cage stipulation on this one. It was a few weeks prior to this on Raw. Actually, you had Orton. He was originally going to face Triple H at Taboo Tuesday if he was able to win a match against Batista, but he lost because of interference from Flair. Of course, Orton then blaming the loss on Flair, which, yes. A week after that, you had Orton commenting that, no matter what Flair had done, that, screw him, like that, he was still hurt, he called Triple H the greatest wrestler of all time instead of Flair, just really kind of on the mic work. And so, and this was, of course, when Orton was the legend killer because he had beaten Shawn Michaels, he had beaten Mick Foley, but Flair, though, the mic work on this one was that those weren't true legends, which how can you say that about Shawn Michaels? But anyways, that he won't be a true legend killer until he beats Flair. And so Flair saying that he and Orton would meet at that match on Taboo Tuesday and that the fans would be able to. So it was really just it was supposed to be Triple H. He lost. We're getting Flair. Like we're telling the story here about being the legend killer. So that's a big part of this is like Orton having to try and beat Flair so that he can be the legend killer. And we get this match after the vote. Now, like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about the stipulation after or during, but yeah, that's where we're at.
Cool. All right. You ready to jump into this?
I'm getting it pulled up again. Let's do it.
2 hour, 36 minute mark, 2 hour, 36 minute mark, Taboo Tuesday 2004. Jeff, are you ready?
I am pulled up. Let's do this.
All right. It's time for the payoff.
Ho! It's time for the payoff.
All right. So
there's a big ass Randy Orton banner back there. Jesus. Cage coming down.
So steel cage wins out over falls count anywhere and submission, which I never understood. I always think falls count anywhere would be more fun than steel cage matches. To me, just feel so limiting. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously there's been some good ones over the years. The voting for this was a little uninspired in my mind. The opponent for Chris Jericho, which Shelton won, there were actually 15 options.
Yep. Most closely beating out, but this is how you can see how screwed he beat out Batista and Jonathan Coachman. Is the number 1, 2, 3? Like, come on.
Fulfill your fantasy battle royal. Schoolgirl won out over French maid and nurse outfit.
Sure.
Can't believe I'm saying that. Weapon of choice. Chain won over steel chair and lead pipe.
I like that. It's a little different. We don't see the chain very often.
Eugene Bischoff, pick the fate of the loser. Shaving their head won pretty easily over wearing a dress or being the winner's servant. Weird. Christy Hemme match was a lingerie pillow fight over an evening gown match or an aerobics challenge. The Triple H, the stipulation there was just that you got to pick who he wrestled against. So Shawn won out over Edge and Benoit. So
close one though. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, it's interesting.
Yeah. So you guys, they both tried to climb out already. Flair's huge low blow there from Flair. Not trying to hide it at all. Apparently this is a no DQ match too. So this one, of course, calling it Taboo Tuesday, it was on a Tuesday, which feels weird to say like, hey, do this. And also like, I think they had a great idea, but just no idea how to implement it because like I said, all the voting was done the day before on Raw, like during the show. And so if you were like, even if you had like taped it and didn't watch it, you weren't, there was no DVR back then in 2004. And Orton already kind of gushing blood. And so you would have missed out on the voting. Like nowadays we would think like you'd give it like the better part of a couple weeks to vote. And even if they fudge the vote at that point, like that's perfectly fine. But Here was the weird thing, and I wanted to look this up. So this was a $35 pay-per-view on a Tuesday night.
I mean, it wasn't even like, I mean, put it this way. Take every pay-per-view this year that AEW and WWE does. I bet you anything that every single one of them was significantly better than this show.
Yeah. And so this was...
Some of these pay-per-views just sucked. Like, who was paying $35 for this?
So too, because of when this was on a Tuesday night, and they obviously learned their lesson on this one, the attendance was only about $3,500, and they said Taboo Tuesday grossed over $215,000 in ticket sales from 3,500 people, and received 174,000 pay-per-view buys. Like, just nothing. Now, for comparison's sake, the same arena 2.5 years before this, which would have been No Way Out 2002, brought in 15,000 people. And so we're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So it's not like we're in Omaha or we're not in like Wichita. Like, we're in a big city. And so there shouldn't be any reason that this isn't happening. But one of the weird external factor, and like I kept seeing this in like notes everywhere, so I had to dig a little bit on it. And so I'm just going to read this, but it kind of speaks to why the pay-per-view did so poorly. In the final effort to hype Taboo Tuesday, WWE ran into the stiffest competition for viewership other than perhaps the Super Bowl, a dramatic extra innings MLB playoff game between the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees. The baseball game, which drew triple the rating the previous Monday baseball playoff game drew, entered extra innings just as Raw began and didn't end until 2 hours into Raw. Viewers may have been reluctant to switch away from the game because they were often men on base and the game was one swing away from being over. Fortunately for WWE, the game ended just in time for the usual Raw viewers to check out the overrun, featuring an angle with Edge, Shawn Michaels, and Chris Benoit. Unfortunately for WWE, the baseball ended with the Red Sox winning, meaning rather than the series ending, the Game 6 the next day would go head-to-head with the pay-per-view itself. Raw drew a 3.0 rating, down from the previous week to 3.4. Taboo Tuesday's buy rate may have been cut substantially by fans of both WWE and baseball who chose to watch Game 6 of the baseball playoffs and bypass what they believed was a skippable WWE event. 1/4 of respondents to our poll said that they would normally order pay-per-view events, but explicitly said because of the baseball game, they were going to watch that instead. So I think why do a pay-per-view on a Tuesday? I think that's just idiotic to begin with. And so you've got that to deal with, but then also you got to look at that external factor of, and this was in baseball was way hotter than it is today. And so you got Flair's pants getting pulled down as well too here as he's trying to climb out. And so, I feel like there's somebody at WWE that's like, oh, this didn't work. Well, there's all this other shit going on nowadays too. And this was when WWE was pulling big numbers, you had baseball and all this other stuff, contributing to this not being a show that people were watching. 3,500 in attendance is small. That is tiny. It's I see so much of it's blacked out too.
Yeah. I mean, just an all around bad idea. And the other thing that Bruce Pritchard's mentioned on his podcast before is that it's tough buying a pay-per-view that you don't know what's going to happen. You didn't know you were getting Triple H and Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
So some of it you didn't even know the opponents or you didn't know the stipulation. So you don't really know what you're buying. I think what makes a hell of a lot of sense. I mean, now, so I was going to say you do it on a Raw or SmackDown, but the problem with Raw and SmackDown is with the time differences. Raw doesn't air live for me on the West Coast,
right?
So that actually wouldn't work. But a PLE, I don't. I mean, they're doing so well with their PLEs right now. I hesitate to even say it, but maybe you try that a Peacock special on a Wednesday night, and you say, hey, it's Interactive Wednesday or whatever, and you do that. And it's that to me would be, I mean, I would 100% watch it live, vote. Like, I'd be all in, man. Like, hey, go on Twitter and vote for each stipulation, and you'll be able to see the results. And I mean, I think that would be cool as shit. I really would like that. I feel like there's a lot you could do now. I would really like to see pick matches.
AEW, it's gotten tired with like it's Fyter Fest. It's these different like weekly named shows that like weren't anything. Like it's like, oh, we're promoting whatever bullshit. Like at the end of the day, though, like it wasn't like it was adding anything to what the show itself was. And so I think to say, hey, yeah, we're gonna like even test it on NXT. Like get some, fine, like get some more eyes on that, like whatever you need to do, and say like, hey, and do it for a week, do it for a couple of weeks. Like you don't have to even have it be like a wrestler's gimmick. Like, hey, like do one match just to like do it for something different. Of like, hey, pick who I should wrestle or pick what gear I should wear, pick what weapon I should like. Just do something to add a little bit of flavor to it. Like I feel like that's what I was going to say is I feel like there's someone at WWE that's like, well, it didn't work the first few times, so we're not going to do it again. Like the age we live in nowadays and how connected we are, like when you're like not doing it, like, like, share, retweet, like, based on how you want to vote. And I don't care. Lie to me about how the votes went. Like, I don't need to know, but like, also like do this, like, show that, like give the fans something. Yeah, it had to be tough too. Like you said, that's a really good point too. You didn't know what you were coming for. Yeah,
but Rollins saying, "Hey, pick my gear. I got 3 options for you.
What boots do I wear?"
Yeah,
like whatever. So Flair,
these two are really going at it. I mean, they're both bleeding. Randy Orton just did a crossbody off the top rope. Flair's gotten bumped off the top rope. I mean, they're really going at it. It's pretty good.
Stiff
match.
Too, like coming down on him pretty hard. Yeah.
Well, I said, I mean, I was like, if they're going to main event, I mean, I'd imagine that this was, I mean, excluding Flair's last match, but I'd have to think this was the last time Flair.
Oof.
I think this is the last time. Would think this is one of the last times that Flair headlined a show. Now, here's what's interesting is I was like, from a timeline standpoint, I was like, man, I wonder if this was like right before his retirement match. Dude, his retirement match wasn't until against Shawn Michaels, wasn't until 4 years after this match.
Crazy.
Dude, he had a long run. So so Flair came back. I mean, wait, let me pull this up. Give me a second here.
Yeah.
So Flair comes back or comes to WWE in 2001, okay? January of 2002 was when he gets recruited by Vince McMahon and says, hey, we'll do one match and it'll be Royal Rumble. And then he worked Undertaker at WrestleMania that year. That was all 2002. Okay. So this is 2004, but he went on and wrestled in WWE for 2008. So he had a 6-year run of wrestling, and he wrestled pretty regularly. It's not like he was wrestling like this pretty darn regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, after 2008, he came out of retirement to do the Hogan tour in Australia. Then he did the TNA matches in 2010 and 11.
We've got a super Crimson Mask Orton too out there. Yep.
Yeah, both bleeding. Flair's trying to get out. Looks like people are looking up at look at all that blood that's on this chair just from Flair bleeding. Okay, so now they're relocking the cage here. Pretty good match, man.
Mm-hmm.
See ya. Wow.
Crazy.
I mean, the fans were into it, man.
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. That was fun.
Yeah.
I'm curious the write-ups were on that. I mean, God, a ton of blood. That was only 10 minutes, but man, it's a hell of a match.
Good 10-minute match. Yeah, good 10 minutes. Solid. Okay.
Good stuff. I liked it. All right, let's get into the aftermath.
Ho! It's time for the aftermath.
Well, what'd you think?
That wasn't bad. Like I said, it was a blood fest. Like it's really what it kind of boiled down to, and it was the RK out of nowhere on that one. But it was just kind of interesting to see. It was stiff, like it was perfectly fine. Yeah, it was good.
I liked it. I mean,
yeah,
it's like it's just a really good match.
And we're always like, sometimes you don't need the blood, but like this one kind of needed it.
Okay.
So, okay. Where do we got kind of what happening on this one? Following this, you had Evolution, who, of course, we didn't even really talk about much, who was Triple H, Ric Flair, and Batista. They were put in charge of Raw after Eric Bischoff took the night off. And so just kind of stepped in. You had Triple H granted Flair the match of his choice, and he wanted a rematch against Randy Orton since he had lost that match, or this match, rather. Orton accepted Flair's challenge with the stipulation that if he defeated Flair, he would get the opportunity to face Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship at Survivor Series. Orton did not get that as he lost to Flair. But you had the traditional Team Orton, Team Triple H Survivor Series. Team Orton was Randy Orton, Chris Jericho, Maven, and Chris Benoit taking on Triple H, Batista, Edge, and Gene Snitsky. So the winning team would be granted control of running the show for a month. And so the winning members would get a week to be in charge of the program. So you had Team Orton beating Team Triple H, and so that's how they kind of ran the show for a little bit on that one. So just kind of interesting. PWI, Orton number 5 in 2004, Flair 30, cracking the top 30. Good job, buddy. And so that's real nice. The torch on this one in the main event of WWE's Taboo Tuesday pay-per-view, Randy Orton pinned Ric Flair in a cage match after an RKO. The bloodied and battered Flair then approached the bloodied Orton after the match and offered a handshake. After a pause, Orton shook Flair's hand. Flair then pulled Orton into a full hug, then raised his arm. Flair collapsed to one knee, but Orton helped him up. Yeah, it could have been also been an impromptu Flair moment that won't be now acknowledged on TV. Who knows? Post-match scene suggested a potential break by Flair from Evolution. So 2.25 stars on that one. This was by a lot the best match of the night, but overall there was a thumbs down on this show. Orton pinned Flair in 10:35. Here's a trivia note. With the exception of Royal Rumbles, this was the first time Flair had ever been in the anchor position of a WWE pay-per-view, and it was the first time he had ever done a cage match in WWE. That can't be real. Like, there's no way.
First cage match? I believe that.
It was also his first pay-per-view main event since March 19th, 2000, when he drew a microscopic buy rate in the death doors of WCW for a strap match where he put over Hogan. It was pretty much a lock when they put him on last. He was going to steal the show. It was just an old school cage match with tons of blood, and really, that was most of the bout. Orton juiced first. It was a great brawl from both sides. Flair used the knuck shot for a near fall. Orton came back with the RKO for a pin. The post-match was even better as Flair wielded the spirit of Terry Funk, of a Terry Funk turn. He put out his hand for Orton to shake. At first, the people didn't want to see it. They ended up hugging, and the crowd thought they were seeing something special. 3.5. So 3.5 from our favorite star giver, Dave Meltzer, and the torch on this one, giving it 2.25. So kind of a big discrepancy there. But Tom, what are you going to give this one?
I've got this at a 6.5.
Okay.
We're at 220 or some matches now. I like fast-paced 10 to 15 minute matches unless it's an all-time classic. So that sweet spot, so I like it. It's entertaining. It goes fast. There was never a dull moment in it. I like these like 10 to 15 really, I like that better than 20, 25. So I personally really like this. You can sit there and watch it and go, okay, that took 10 minutes. In an hour, I could watch, 4 or 5 matches like that, including entrances. Yeah. Which is cool. So I'm very entertained by it. I liked it. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm gonna give it a 6. I think that To your point about like, I know even recently we've seen comments of Triple H being like, hey, like this match wasn't on the card because we want to try and keep it as a tight card. And so, yeah, I would rather have matches that they are given some time to breathe, or on like, fine. You want a 60-minute Kenny Omega match, you can find that. But also like, sometimes like, you don't need your 5-star classics in the words of Big E. Like sometimes you just want to watch two guys go out there and wrestle. And that's exactly what it didn't have any downtime. Like I get it was only 10 minutes, but there was a lot of action and a lot happening in that 10 minutes. And also it told a story. And so that's what it should have been. And so just really good all around on that front. So yeah, I'm at a 6. I know you're at a 6.5. So there you go.
There you go.
Good stuff. Plain and simple.
Good. So yeah, real good. I enjoyed it, man. You continue to do a great job finding these matches that in a lot of cases I sure as hell don't remember ever happening. You figure we're covering matches over like a 35, 40 year period at this point. And now with all these shows and pay-per-views, and I mean the amount of content that is created, it's wild, man.
Yeah, so we got some good stuff lined up here too. We're almost.
I don't remember what else. What do we have coming up?
Yeah, we're almost into November at this point. We've got next week. We're going to go back to 2000. No Mercy. You and I back in our high school days. Kurt Angle versus The Rock for the championship at No Mercy. Don't remember that one at all.
Well, I just watched the Angle doc.
Me too. Yep,
really good.
Great. Yep.
Forget like him and Rock had a good rivalry, so I bet you that was a pretty damn good match.
Yeah, so one that I did not remember, we know like Bret Hart and Diesel, actually, it's a Survivor Series match from 1995. It was
that was a great match. Oh, yeah. I'm pumped to cover. I can't believe we haven't covered that one yet. That's the Diesel heel turn. That was I remember watching that live. That was a really, really good match.
So we got that one. And then we're going actually back to Taboo Tuesday next year, actually 2005. But more than anything, we have a young Jonathan Chena, Kurt Angle, and Shawn Michaels in a 3-way match. And so we're gonna talk about that a little bit. And then capping it off, we got some different stuff at the end of November. People should be excited. We got some ECW again. Again, I do not remember this one. You might. Mickey Whipwreck versus Steve Austin, November to Remember 1995. But then also we're going to focus on, we have going back, way back in the coffee, another Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio Jr. match for the Cruiserweight Champion at World War III 1997. So we are packed through November. We got some good stuff.
Good, man. I'm pumped to cover it. And we appreciate everyone listening. Before we jump off, plug our shit real quick.
Yeah, of course. Don't forget manscaped.com. Using that code PAYOFF, you're getting 20% off and free shipping, everything that you put in your cart. So don't forget to use that code. Of course, we also see enter code right there at the checkout. Like you got to do it after you load up into your cart, everything, but PAYOFF, just PAYOFF, giving you 20% off and free shipping. Absolutely worth it. Don't worry about putting your email in to get like 10 or 15% off. Use our code. Then on the flip side, of course, too, that men's skincare, Caldera Lab, whatever you're looking for, like whether it's, I know it's weird to say, but like eye care, skincare, it's important stuff. Like as we're getting older, we're all trying to take care of ourselves, want to look good for our significant others. Make sure to check out their site. Also PAYOFF. Use that code, get you 20% off. CalderaLab.com.
That's it, man. Great job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good stuff.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We love doing this, and we'll see you next week on an all-new episode of The Payoff.